Hello, I'm Lauren. Welcome back. If you like anything that I've done before, please hit subscribe. I would appreciate it. I'm a small channel and I'm trying to share more sewing, educational content, stuff to do with the world, and information about the clothing industry. So if you're interested whatsoever in anything I have to say, comment, like, do all that sort of stuff. I got more engagement on my last video than I thought I would, as somebody who's like just coming back to all of this with only 131 subscribers or something. So subscribe for future content. But anyway, today I wanted to talk about just the baseline fast fashion practices. This is like a beginner starter video off the dome about fast fashion and why it is bad. Now, a lot of people will probably come to me, as they have in my real life, and they tell me things like, well, sometimes this is all I can afford, or sometimes I want this style, but if I were to get it at a nicer quality, it's going to be too expensive for me. I very much understand the plight of the economic situation we are currently in. I get this comment a lot from my drag friends, as a drag queen, who can't afford a lot of different things since, working for tips, and I have 5 different jobs, which is why what holds me up is why I have a studio now, thankfully, which is what I am in right now. It is a little messy. I just moved completely into here, so now all this stuff is in this little room. But when I talk about fast fashion and its inconceivable harms, I am very dead serious about this, and I've completely changed all of my practices when it comes to fast fashion. Also, as I'm talking to you today, I am doing some alterations on a wedding dress. So if you see me working on something, I am working on a wedding dress. But basics to the fast fashion industry. How I started off in this realm, I used to really like fast fashion. The last time that I had purchased something that was fast fashion was, I believe, in 2019 or 2020. It was a while ago. It was prior to me having my political awakening. It was prior to me going to college. 2019 would have been my senior year of high school. So this was back still when mall culture was a little bit more relevant than it is now, and I would always get the sale stuff that was at stores, and I would do that. And I've thrifted my whole life, so it was pretty easy for me to transition from having to buy new and having to thrift, because nowadays I thrift and get everything secondhand, or I create it myself. That is kind of my rule for myself. I know not everyone can do that. I know not everyone is able to, and I know that this method also has a limit on the amount of sizes people can find, because finding good secondhand items that are above a 4X sale, for example, is harder to find than things that are in my size. I'm small for a 24-year-old. I'm like a size 4, so it's very easy for me to come across lots of different stuff. I'm very into vintage, and a lot of the stuff that tended to survive were items of smaller size, just because there was more of them. There were items that did exist in plus sizes in vintage fashion, but these items were not as around, and they a lot of items don't survive the course of time, and it depends on what people archive over time as well. So you have to think about all of those limiters when it comes to finding at least vintage fashion, for example. So with all of that being said, fast fashion, why it's bad. So let's start off with the cost of fast fashion pieces. Why are they so cheap? I want to implore to everyone on the face of the earth, as somebody who makes clothes from scratch and has been sewing for the last 16 years of my life. Yes, I have been doing this for almost 20 years. This shit takes a lot of time. and a lot of effort and a lot of skill, and it is also very harmful to your hands, to your body, to your overall, like, it physically hurts. I've been going through a lot of my own stuff when it comes to my hands and my wrists and stuff as I have been doing this much more. Especially when I started crocheting, I started having a lot of issues. Fun fact, anything crocheted, no matter if it is fast fashion or handmade by somebody on the street, it's always done by hand. You can't crochet by machine. You can knit by machine. That's easy to do for a knitting machine, but if it is crocheted, it is always done by hand. So people in those factories are crocheting your little crochet top you get at H&M by hand. And why is it $5? It's because they're basically paying them pennies to do that sort of thing. A lot of the setups for these types of businesses, and China has gotten better with this over the years, not like their business practices are better at all by any means, but at least their workers are getting paid more than they used to. In relation to USD, it is not nearly as much, but they kind of get by on it. But the labor practices in these factories are terrible. There are videos of laborers in the places that make things for Temu and Shein, for example, and they have laborers who are literally sleeping on the floor of the factory as they are like needing to get in all of their hours. They don't have limits on hours sometimes. A lot of the times the boss at this particular factory will basically be like, you get the amount of pay that you get for as long as you are here, and we will give you that pay, but we aren't going to limit your hours. So that is one piece of it. Another piece of it is there's a lot of child labor as well involved in this industry, as well as unfair labeling practices, which is what I kind of mentioned before. So legally, you do have to have a label on your clothing if it is made from like a big company, or if it's being sold in these bigger stores. They do legally have to have info on it as to like where it's made, what it's made from, and washing instructions, all of that sort of stuff. They have to have those tags on your clothes. Now, are they always accurate? No, they're not. If there is a fiber in there that is less than 1% of the amount of material that is in a garment, they don't legally have to disclose it. They just say 1% other materials. Also, the origin of the garment, it's usually typically has to have a location label for at least one of the places that it is made. Clothing tends to travel quite around the world, which is why it causes so many carbon emissions to make fast fashion. You would start by possibly, let's just do a theoretical t-shirt, for example. You get your fabric harvested in Uzbekistan illegally. There's a whole, this is in my playlist, but they go to Uzbekistan and they show the, $1 billion cotton industry that is there. And they're very outward. This journalist goes in and is under a lot of danger when going into Uzbekistan, which is a dictatorship, to go in and try to film the practices of these corporations by posing as a French buyer for a mega corporation. So she goes in and she films them without their knowledge, and she gets lots of information from these factories. And one of the things that they dropped of information lore is the fact that they do not have to label where this cotton came from. There are a lot of companies who say that they boycott Uzbekistan cotton, but they actually don't, because they're lying. And a lot of Uzbekistan cotton, when they're talking to their producers and the people that want to buy from them, they actually show it as a perk that they can say it's from anywhere. They can say it's made in Bangladesh. They can say it's made in France. They can say it's made in Germany. Pretty much anywhere but Uzbekistan, because of the bad implications of that, especially since they're field workers. A lot of people like that it's a cheap bottom line because they don't pay their laborers, and they also don't have machines. It's all picked by hand. There is video evidence of these laborers picking cotton by hand and being forced to be a part of this industry by the Uzbekistan government. This is all documented. I highly recommend you watch the documentary in my playlist Made in House that is on this channel. So, with these practices in mind, not just with the fibers themselves, but the garments themselves in total, in where they are made, they can basically just make up. And when you try to trace back the origin of like where a fiber came from or where certain techniques and practices came from, it's almost untraceable. So they can get away with these things legally. So let's say you get your cotton from Uzbekistan. Then it gets shipped to India to get dyed. This is a big market for dyeing, and textiles is in India. There's a lot of the textile world comes from India. Then, let's say you send it over to, what's another one? Yeah, let's just do Bangladesh. Let's say it gets then shipped to Bangladesh to be sewn, and then it finally gets shipped all the way over to France, where they then put on the tag or a button or a final finishing item onto this piece of clothing, so that they can legally say it was made in France. They do this a lot in big high-end brands, the ones that you would think were, made in fancy ateliers with the utmost quality and practices for their labor. They tend to be made in the same places as these fast fashion items are made, just so that they can get a bigger profit off of their name label being on them. This isn't as much of a big thing as it used to be, but I remember in the 2010s, labeling being on everything was such a major thing. You wanted to show off the label you had of certain pieces of clothing, because you're like, well, I'm wearing Coach. I want to show off that I'm wearing Coach because I'm bougie. I even participated in this with my own brand, Heart, at the time, which is my runway brand. Made in House is my upcycling clothing brand that I want to put the utmost time into. Heart is more so my passion project, let's just say. I would put my name label on all the garments that I made on the outside so you would know it was me, but I'm an extremely small designer. It's not going to be a flex or anything to be wearing something with my brand name on it by any means, you know what I mean? And so I also took part in this just because it was like a trend at the time. I made this collection in 2019, but it was for my 2020 line. So I really leaned into that sort of stuff, monogrammed everything, did the whole bit, right? But that is how they get away with not necessarily having the quality that it needs. And this is kind of what you see when you're like out on New York City, out on the streets, and there's people with like blankets down on the sidewalk selling like Coach and Gucci like purses and wallets and stuff. There is a way to there are people out in the world that can identify dupes because of specific things that a real version of the thing would have rather than a fake version of the thing would have. So real versions usually have like the name is on the zipper, the name is on the lining, the name is on the outside, the name is everywhere in very particular spots on like the purse, for example. And then dupes may tend to have like blank linings, or the zipper isn't monogrammed, or random little cheap fixtures that they can put on it and then convey as being the same design as this other thing, especially Louis Vuitton stuff. This happened a lot too over the course of time. A lot of Louis Vuitton stuff has been duped, and they can kind of get away with it in that regard as well. And a lot of people are walking around not realizing they have dupes. But the dupes are honestly comparable in quality to the real thing anyway, because like I said, these big fashion companies tend to make all of their like high quality stuff in a lot of the similar places as the fast fashion stuff is made as well. Well, how can you get around not buying fast fashion, not giving the big corporations all your money and all your dollars, so you can keep having your Shein hauls? Well, you can learn how to sew. I highly implore everyone learn how to sew again. This used to just be a human thing that everyone had to kind of know how to do, because clothing is not as plentiful as it is today. It is now being mass produced at a scale where we literally have 6 generations worth of clothing on Earth right now. Right now. There's 6 generations worth of clothing out into the world, which is why I started an upcycling company. And I always say that if I were to get booted out, and if I were to not make enough money due to the fact that everyone else is upcycling and doing their practices in that way, then I would have said, all right, that's okay. That's what I want. I want the clothing industry to stop making new stuff. I don't like getting new stuff unless it is very small scale niche or it is from a small designer. I know a lot of local, like screen printers, for example. I work for a small business screen printer. I can very visually see with my own eyes. I work in the building. I know what the practices are. We are paid fairly. We're compensated well. We have benefits. We aren't, being worked to the bone by any means. I know everybody in the company, so it's not those people. It's not everything that looks just like a t-shirt. For example, when you go down the line, when you start looking at blanks like Gilded and stuff, that's a different story that I have a little bit of a problem with, but we'll talk about that a different day. But when it comes down to like the art on something, or when it comes down to like people making things at very, very small scale at like markets and stuff, I like getting that stuff new, because I know it's usually a one-off, or it's like maybe 1 of 10 that's ever going to be produced, and it's produced by like one person or a small group of people. So that's really the only instance in which I get anything new, is I go to the farmer's market and I have my like 5 people I buy my clothes from, and then I just make other stuff myself, or I go to the thrift store and I get stuff myself. To get around the problem of not having the right size for you or not having the right fit for you, sewing is a great opportunity to know how to do this. You can get your YouTube University with sewing and learning how to sew. It was actually a major part of what taught me how to sew. I learned how to drape patterns on dress forms from YouTube. I learned from an Angela Clayton video, and she does historical costuming. The historical costume makers on here really, really pay attention to detail, and they're like almost the only people that I look to for like technique advice and sewing advice and all of this kind of niche stuff. If you want to like really make a good quality garment, I recommend looking at the historical garment makers here on YouTube. There are a lot of really good people who give like close up videos of how to do stuff. Another good content creator for more casual items and projects that are more approachable would be With Wendy. I used to watch her a lot. She taught me how to clone my clothes and how to take something that you already like and fits you well and recreate the pattern so that you can make multiples of it. And so I did this with a pair of overalls I had when I was younger, and I made like 3 or 4 different pairs, and I even made them in slightly different sizes because it was actually pretty easy to expand the pattern and make it a little bigger. And when you're changing even in your own size, I feel like the fashion industry has really made you want to feel bad about your size or your weight or how something fits you, because clothing all used to be custom made to your body. This used to not be a thing. When the silhouette changed, your body wasn't forced to change, like with the, like how the hourglass figure was super popular in the 2010s, and now it's more so my body type, where it's a little bit more boyish and slender, kind of like the, 90s heroin chic is kind of coming back, unfortunately. And so I'm just naturally smaller, so it's not like I'm trying to be a certain body type by any means, but body types used to not be a thing that was in fashion. It was the padding and the silhouette of the clothes themselves that would be the indicator of the silhouette at the time. So people would change all of the padding that they would have underneath their clothes in order to create a certain silhouette for the time. And when you look at Victorians, for example, this is probably why you look at them and you're like, wow, their silhouette's insane. Their waistlines are all so small. Like, how do people get into this shape? It's because they're wearing corsets, which flattens everything out. Corsets also are very historically, like, not tight-laced as often as you would think. Usually, like 90% of the time, they are only laced up to the point where you're comfortable in them. They are just the precursor to modern-day bras, but I honestly like them better because they also give you back support. They're really good for more well-endowed people, and so I always recommend for everyone, I'm like, if you're a little bit more well-endowed, get into corsets because it also helps you have that back support. The back support that bras just don't give you. The modern brassiere was only invented in the 20s, and it was invented due to the fact that they didn't want all of the stuff that they would wear underneath their clothes to then be underneath like very slim cut, very more short skirted as well. This was the shortest the silhouette got at the time. Kind of dress that people would wear at this time. So the undergarments also got smaller because the clothing and the layers also got smaller. Sorry. I tell this to absolutely everyone that feels like they can't fit in their clothes or they feel bad in the clothing that they wear. It's like, it wasn't made for you. I implore everyone learn how to alter. And that is the whole point of this channel as well. I am going to teach you techniques on how to alter your own clothes, how to hem your own clothes, how to fix your own clothes, how to put buttons on things, because I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to, like, yeah, it gives me business, but it's not like my favorite thing in the world. Tailoring isn't my favorite thing in the world. I've also been an employed tailor in the past for like a men's suit business, you know, and so like I know this realm, and I know this is like kind of sometimes a highly specialized field, but for the simple things, for hemming your jeans, for sewing on a button, for fixing a zipper, for example, these are very common things. Patching up a sweater that I feel like everyone should know because it also saves you money. Instead of throwing out that thing that loses a button because you can no longer wear your blouse anymore, you're going to have that little gap and you don't want that, you can fix the button and you don't have to pay a cent in order to do that. If you have the stuff on hand, you can just fix it. And that is the whole point of why I want to do this channel. But what I implore with everybody is you just have to find the thing that fits you right. Everybody can look good in a thing that fits them right. And the problem with modern day clothes is that it is made mass production, so it is not made for you. It is made for a baseline model. Every single company has a baseline model that they base all of their other sizes off of proportionally. So they start with their base size, which is usually their average size across their customer base, and they do a lot of studying on what their customer base is and their target markets, and then they base all of the other sizes off of that typically. And so the proportion of every brand is a little different, which is why you can get the same size of jeans from two different companies and they can fit completely differently. And then depending on just like the production of that particular piece in general, it can also change as well. So I don't have much time and I could talk about this all day, right? But bottom line, thrift, buy local. If you have a farmer's market or if you want to go on Depop and find stuff that people are getting rid of, I love Depop. It's a secondhand market. You can also find a lot of handmade stuff on there, and I sell my handmade stuff on Depop. So if you want to check out my promo, if you want to check out my Depop, it is where I sell my items, and I am trying to get stuff back up onto the store again. But if you want to support me in any way, I highly appreciate it if you go to my Depop account. It is the same username that I have on it's not the same username. I'm trying to think about stuff. It's just under Maidenhaus, Depop/Maidenhaus, MAYDINHAUS if you want to support me, or you can subscribe, like, and comment on my videos. Don't have much more time. to speak with you today, but I hope this kind of gives you a little bit more of a base understanding as to like how I stand with fast fashion and what it can kind of all entail. This is a very specific, nuanced conversation that I could talk about for a very long time. So if you have any questions or you're interested in learning about a particular part of the process when it comes to even just fast fashion in general, I highly recommend you comment down below something that you would be interested in learning about, and I can compile my own information and do that. So thank you for watching. I will see you later. Bye.